Alright, welcome back. So today's video we're going to continue on. We're going to basically strip the remaining parts off the side of the mower. Once I've stripped the remaining parts there, I will remove the reel and the cutter bearing housings which the reel sits in. So guys, it's basically just unscrew as many bolts as you can. Things will fall off and pop them aside. I'll bring up any notes if anything should be pointed out to keep or whatnot, but really there's really not a great deal more to it, so let's get into it. Righto, so chain tensioner. This is in really good condition, and they work quite well, the plastic nylon ones. This particular mower, I'll probably end up replacing that with one from Moparts Oz. They have an upgraded idler version, and just looks like a gear basically. I think it's an excellent upgrade, and definitely one to consider if you're going to rebuild a mower. However, the nylon ones, if it's in good condition, there's nothing wrong with it. You're more than happy to use that. Depends on your budget really, to be honest. So pop that aside. The bracket here, I will keep that bracket. The nut and spring washer can go. That does come in a replacement nut and bolt kit. So the bracket keep, definitely that's in really good condition as well. There's no rust or anything on there, so pop them aside. Okay, so intermediate clutch is now off. So this is a clutch. There is actually a cork inside this. So that cork is what engages the rear roller. So when you squeeze the trigger up on the handlebars, it squeezes this part here together. As that squishes together, the outer gear here grabs, and this is connected to your rear roller. As it grabs, the gear on the inside here starts spinning, which in turn, through the chain, spins the rear roller. So that's how you end up with drive. So intermediate clutch, that's called. There are a few parts here. There's actually two bearings. So there's one bearing inside the outer sprocket, I suppose you could call it. So that's in here. That actually looks like it's been replaced on this mower, which is probably a good thing. This center part here does actually push out, so we'll push that out with a press or in the vise or something, and then we'll pop that bearing out. So basically hit the bearing out this way, actually maybe this way. Anyway, we'll get the bearing out, and this cork, so this cork will be coming off. That's just glued on there. I like to use a flat chisel or something like that, scrape that right off. To be honest, this must be a brand new cork or very close to it, because it's incredibly thick still. Normally that will wear quite thin. Once it goes thin, you don't want metal on metal, so it's time to replace. And there's no chunks taken out of it, which is nice. So this part here will actually pull off this bracket. There's a bearing on the other side of this, basically in the center of where that sprocket is. There's a bearing that presses onto this shaft here. So that can come off. Okay, rear roller sprocket is off. You did see I needed the gear puller, basically just to crack the retaining pressure on there. So once I cracked it, I could then do that with my hand. I have sprayed this mower considerably with oil, just some sort of WD-40 sort of stuff, and I think that's helped disassembling quite a lot. So this has been on my bench for probably 3 weeks now. So in that time it's been soaking, it's been getting into parts and doing its job. So anyway, rear roller gear is off. That'll clean up nicely. It's just a bit dirty, but that'll clean up nicely. So that's off. That's basically everything off the side of the mower. There's actually no other parts here that are going to hold us up. So now we'll move on to the reel, rip the reel out, rip the reel bearing housings out, and once we've done that, we can pretty much disassemble the frame. So that'll probably be in the next video, but carry on. Okay, so I'm going to rip the reel out. So first thing I'm going to do is just loosen the nuts on the height adjustment, or the blade to bed knife adjustment. Basically that's just going to release the pressure. They'll be clamped together, and this bracket on the mower will actually hold that in place. So release the pressure there so we can remove that. After I'm going to do that, I'm going to remove the 2 screws from the top of each bearing housing. Once we've done that, the reel should slip out. Once I've got the reel out, then I'll just remove the remaining nuts on the bearing housings, and they should just pull out. So fingers crossed that'll go easily, but here we go. Okay, so the tops of the bearing housings are out. They appear to be in pretty good condition, so we probably will end up reusing the bearing housings. If not, you can purchase them. They are probably one of the more expensive items. So if you can reuse yours, I'd probably recommend that. Screws. So screws will come brand new in nut and bolt kit. So basically, don't worry about keeping them. They're a bit dirty, rusty. It's not an issue. So now now that we've removed the tops of them, the reel should just slip out. Once we've got the reel out, I'll quickly show you guys how much stuff's wrapped around the shaft of the reel. So pretty common for mowers that have been used in grass that's too long for a cylinder mower. Or just yards in general that aren't really cylinder mower worthy, I suppose you could say. So we'll pull the reel out. And you'll see, so someone's obviously made over a bit of fabric or something that's wrapped around the shaft, so that's a considerable amount there. There's also long bits of grass in there, possibly a vine maybe. Looks like a bit of string and all sorts of stuff. So we'll remove that from the shaft. This end actually has the same thing. This looks like a bit of elastic. Bit of elastic and string and straw maybe. Who knows? Anyways, basically you don't want that on your reel, so that'll be all cleaned up. The bearings, I dare say the bearing has been replaced. It's now a sealed bearing, so I dare say someone's replaced that somewhere along the line. It is in good condition. Nonetheless, that will be replaced. This bearing here is... it's okay, I reckon it would clean up, but again, that's going to get replaced. So we'll pop them off each end. And, oh guys, so on the old mowers, there's a small bit of foam in one end. So basically the non-drive side, so the chain side is the drive side, the non-drive side has a bit of foam. So back in the day, the bearings were never sealed, and in order to lubricate the bearing, this bit of foam would retain oil. So you'd put oil in the top of the bearing housing. There's a little oiling point here. It's like a ball bearing with a spring. So you'd pump oil into that, that would fill up the little area there, and then the foam would retain the oil, and that would lubricate the bearing. So this bit of foam is no longer needed. Today's bearings are all sealed, though I always put it back in, just more of a nostalgic sort of thing, but it's not necessary. Anyway, we'll remove these, so there's just 2 nuts on each side, and then the bearing housing will pull off, so we'll crack on with that. Okay, we've got them out. Just inspect them for any cracks. Normally they'll crack here if anywhere. Just make sure they're not cracked. If they're not cracked, I would probably recommend reusing them. Provided the bearing is still snug in here, so if it's not snug, the bearing actually spins in here, and as that spins, because these are only aluminium, it wears away the aluminium, and then when you put a new bearing in there and clamp it down, it actually doesn't clamp the bearing, and it continues to spin in there. So that's no good. However, these ones do appear to be nice and tidy looking, so they will be reused. You can strip these further. So basically the bolt at the back here, so that's a pivot bolt. When it's in there, that's what pivots up and down, and that's basically what the reel goes up and down, so you can adjust your height of your reel. So that pivot bolt can get removed. It does come out. This one's come out pretty easy, so that's nice. And then at the front here, the height adjustment bolt will unscrew, so if you unscrew that, there's also another bolt here which does push out. So just quickly do that and show you. Okay, so as you can see, the bolt comes out. You can replace these. They quite often bend. So if you've got too much tension on them, I find that they bend. Once they bend, they're no good. So that does come out, and this pivot bolt at the front also comes out as well. So that is completely stripped. I will clean that up probably with sandblaster or maybe vapor blasting, not sure yet. That'll come up nicely. These, if they're in good condition, will also be reused. I think they probably will be reused. They came out quite easily, and the threads appear to be in good condition. So I'll pop them aside, I'll keep them, and that's basically it for this video. So next video we will start undoing the side bolts which holds all the deck and the sides together. Once that comes out, you will see that the sole plate and bed knife will drop out, the front roller bracket will drop out, the top deck will drop out, and the rear roller should drop out. So that'll be next week's video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, so I thought I'd show you how I go about now. And I'm positive there's different ways, and I'm sure, I know for a fact that there's what they call a bearing puller. But I thought I'd show you how I go about removing the bearings from the cutting wheel. So each end's got a bearing. One end's got woodruff key. So first of all, woodruff key needs to come out. I normally just grab a pair of side cutters, pinch it and pull it up. Now that doesn't always work. Sometimes they're seized in. If they're seized in, you're probably going to have to heat the shaft up, heat the woodruff key up, and then pull it out. So We'll see if we can get that out with side cutters. Okay, so I'm lucky. I was able to get that out with side cutters. Basically how I do that is I just pinch the sides of the woodruff key and then push down on the shaft, which actually pushes up on the woodruff key. So if you do that, you will come across cut lines inside the woodruff key. Basically the woodruff key will be rendered useless from that point onwards. So that's not to worry. Woodruff keys are, I don't know, probably 20 cents, not even. So now we've removed that, I will ensure that the shaft is extremely clean. So I'll go next level and clean that. So basically as that bearing slides off the shaft, I try and remove as much dirt as possible. And the smallest amount of grit or anything will actually bind the bearing up, so and scratch the shaft, which we don't want to do. So clean that thoroughly, and once you've cleaned that, I normally get a screwdriver in there and push off, and it generally loosens enough to be able to pull that off. Not always. If it doesn't, I try my gear puller. So that's not a bearing removing tool, that's a gear puller. It's designed to remove gears, not bearings. However, it has the same principle. If you can latch behind the bearing, we can pull that off nicely. So this end, exactly the same process. Obviously you don't have a shaft, so it's less cleaning basically. But a big screwdriver normally gets them started. Once they've started, then you can generally get it off, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so another trick is to grab 2 flat blade screwdrivers. If you have one on each side, you can sort of use it as a prying bar. If you apply even pressure on both sides, it'll allow the bearing to be pulled straight. If you just go one side, what that does is the bearing sort of wants to pivot, and as soon as that pivots, you won't be able to pull that off the shaft because you're actually the center hole of the bearing is then on an angle. So unless the shaft was on an angle, which it's not, you just won't be able to get that off. So screwdriver each side generally does the trick. It's done the trick here, so I've got that started now. So once you get it started, you should be right to get the rest of it. So a bit of lubrication on the shaft should hopefully have that slide a bit easier. So I'll crack on a bit more. Okay, so you can see that the bearing is quite a way down the shaft now. That's good. So what's actually stopping that now is where the woodruff key was. Quite often you'll find that the edges of that sort of cutout in the shaft is a little bit raised. If it's bad, generally I get a file, a very, very fine file, and just file the tops of them off. If it's not too bad, this one actually doesn't look too bad, you should just be able to power through and pull that off. So this bearing's not getting reused, so I don't mind if I totally render the thing useless, as long as it comes off without damaging the shaft. So because it's so far up now, what I'm going to do is get my gear puller underneath it and then wind that off. So basically the gear puller will allow that to be even amount of pressure all the way around the bearing to be able to pull that off in a straight fashion. So okay, so as I wind that up tight, it should pull the bearing off. So, just like that, the bearing separates from the shaft. You won't be able to tell on camera, but the bearing actually no longer even spins, basically because I've stuffed the bearing up. Basically, I've screwed it up by using the gear puller. But if you're going to replace it, what does it matter if the bearing doesn't work? So, bearing's off, and another thing which you'll find behind the bearing is the bearing shield. So basically, bearing shield is a washer that's sort of got a concave to it, and back in the day that would protect the non-sealed bearing from having dirt and stuff gather up and bunch inside the bearing. So these days, in my opinion, they don't really do a great deal of the bearing shields. However, you do need it because it will space the bearing off a little bit and put the bearing in the right spot, etc. Though they're sort of more for the non-sealed bearings. So anyway, we'll pop it aside. There's nothing wrong with that one. We'll reuse that. We'll do the same process on the other end, and once we've done that, that is the reel disassembled. And there we have it. So this bearing still spins, however you can hear that the ball bearings inside are not lubricated enough. Sort of sounds like a metal on metal sort of grinding feeling. You can feel it when you spin it in your finger. Anyway, that will be replaced. Here's our bearing shield, and that will probably be reused. So, reel gets sandblasted, cleaned up, painted, sharpened before it's installed in the mower.